Venus turns retrograde October 5th. It's in the sign of Libra. Venus is the ruler of Libra, making this a very powerful and potent retrograde cycle. What does it mean for your relationships, your relationship to desires and pleasure and happiness? Check it out. On October 5th, 2018, Venus turns retrograde in the sign of Libra. Now, Venus is, of course, the planet of relationships, romance, finding love and happiness, and enjoying ourselves with others. And when Venus turns retrograde, which happens about every year and a half or two, it turns retrograde for about 40 days, and it shows where that quality of interacting with others in the world winds up sort of backing up and reversing, and Venus becomes, and it actually, from being an evening star, it becomes a morning star and starts to, and will then rise before the sun. So Venus retrograde winds up going from its maximum elongation, where it's very far away from the sun, back to rising before the sun in the morning. So what we're going to see is this happening in the sign of Libra, which is ruled by Venus. And you can, it's been mythologically compared, especially in Western mythology, to like Persephone going down into hell and into Hades, to go down into the depths of the underworld and getting burned and purged in the fire of purification and evil, even, where this is sort of a trial by fire, like a sort of crucible, where our desires can pull us down into the depths of hell so we can emerge on the other side with greater compassion, even compassion for the devil, sympathy for the devil, you might say. And it's a remarkable kind of story and mythology. And, it's an interesting thing to ponder, because Venus, again, it shows our worldly desires, which we often attach to other people, mainly our romantic partners. So a lot of our romantic projections and this belief that, if I just find the right person, then I'll be happy, then, life will be, worth living, and it'll all work out. It's very deep, it's very thick, and we all have it. We all try to find that soulmate or that person that we want to be with, that sort of completes us on a sort of physical level, based on, sexuality, but also it's not just sex, but just, the companionship and the feeling that we're not alone. All of these, are a major part of the Venus transformational cycle of life on Earth. And of course, because I'm a Vedic astrologer, I see everything, and of course I also teach astrology. That's my main focus, and I use the structures and the frameworks of Indian Sanatana Dharma, Indian frameworks of yoga, to describe that evolutionary process. And it's through what's called the Three Gunas. I've taught this to many students now, and many of my students go to teach it themselves as well, or to talk about it this way. And it's in my book, Yoga and Vedic Astrology, as well. One of the main core qualities of how I teach and how you should understand astrology is based on these frameworks of body, mind, and spirit. So we don't just evolve randomly somehow. Oh yeah, it evolves. How does it evolve? What is the evolutionary process? Well, things evolve through body, which is called the tamasic guna, mind or emotions, which is the Rajasic Guna, and spirit, which is called the Sattvic Guna, or that spiritual thing which is beyond just our own, viewpoint. So Venus expressing itself in that sort of tamasic, self-interested way, which is in many ways through the physical body, expresses itself in the form of like pleasure, physical pleasure. Like for instance, you don't need anybody to give you pleasure. You can pleasure yourself. And I don't just mean that in a dirty way, like in the form of sex, but even the form of, like, let's say, ice cream or food is the easiest way. That's why food and sex are so related, because food is a way you can please yourself with nobody else. But sex, actual sex, sexuality with someone, certainly increases the pleasure. So the more nuanced the expression, the more joy and pleasure you get from it. So sex doesn't just give you pleasure, it gives you happiness. Food and indulgence doesn't give you happiness. It can give you pleasure, but pleasure is fleeting. And again, happiness is also fleeting, but it's a little more sustained. Happiness is the Rajasic Guna, because happiness is an emotion, which is Rajasic. The Rajasic Guna is emotion. And happiness is the feeling. And it's also the feeling you get from pleasure. But again, you can see very clearly that pleasure is not really a feeling. It's an experience of pleasure. And you have that experience of pleasure even when you have sex. But it's the physical happiness. That's what you would call pleasure, right? So you can have the physical pleasure from eating the candy, but you're not going to get the happiness from it. It doesn't really make you happy. It just is just pleasing for a short amount of time. Then there's also a payment. There's also a price to pay, right? For the pleasure. For the happiness, it requires more of your awareness and intention. And the thing that really drives sexuality and happiness with another person especially, which is what Venus is really seeking, it requires that you not only please yourself, but that you actually want to please another person, equal to yourself, right? And sometimes even more so. In fact, that's the first thing that we do in a relationship, because it extends us beyond just our pleasure. And we also realize in the back of our mind, again, a lot of this is unconscious, but we realize this is a much higher level of pleasure as well. Not only does it not give me not only does pleasure not give me happiness, but this thing gives me more pleasure and it gives me happiness. That's why sex and interacting with another person in that deep way compounds the pleasure and the happiness, right? So one of the main things we have to look at with Venus energy, this is one of the biggest things to notice, is how we are complicit in the attachment to the relationship with another person because of what we get from it. So what usually happens with Venus energy, especially as it comes to relationships, is we're extended beyond our own pleasure seeking, and we try to accommodate the other person more. We're pulled into that more. It's the function that wants to please the other person, equal to our self, and in fact even more so at first. But we can't lose sight of this. The reason we do it is still for our own selfish reasons. It's because we want the connection. We don't tell ourselves that usually. We usually say, oh no, all I do for you, all I've done, I would have done anything to make you happy. Right, until you stop making me happy, then I won't do a damn thing. So we have to be honest. We got to keep it real. This is Sam's Keep It Real Astrology, right? So yes, we are extended beyond our own comfort zone, beyond our own pleasure and happiness cycle. But the first motivation, the first reason we do it is because of what we get as a result. We get the connection. We get the happiness. We get the pleasure. We get that feeling of Venus that we can't get on our own. We can't get happiness on our own. We can get pleasure, but not the happiness. not the Venus happiness, the emotion, the joy that comes from really being able to experience happiness through another person and to make them happy and see it come back and know that we can create happiness, that we can create joy. Again, this is what Rajas is. Rajasic Guna is about doing something. It's making someone else happy, and having that come back makes us feel good. So you have to understand, the thing that makes a person shut down in a relationship isn't the fact that they're not getting happiness. The main thing that makes a person shut down is when they can't make the other person happy. Think about it. Think about when you start to really withdraw from a relationship. It's when you realize, no matter what I do, I can't make this person happy. I can't make them happy, especially if we really love the person. We start to feel bad for ourselves, but also for them. Because we realize no matter what I do, I can't make her happy. Or if it's, you know, a woman to a man. And this is where we feel the failing of Venus, personally. And then if we're honest and we're reflective, we also realize that that has a lot of us in it, because we feel bad that we can't make them happy. It really spirals back on ourselves, because that's the origin, that's the deeper motivation, is the Tamasic Guna. Everything always revolves around you first. No matter how selfless you think you are, you're motivated by your own motivations. No one makes you do anything. And when you're doing something even for someone else, it doesn't mean we aren't selfless, we are. We have a very strong need and desire to make others happy and to serve something bigger than ourselves. But the first instinct to do that is because we feel good doing it, right? So Rajas extends us beyond our own pleasure toward happiness, again, for ourselves, and we realize that that a higher level of happiness is in sharing and magnifying. And this is really what sex is. And plus, it's so hard to find someone that you actually want to do that with, or that you're attracted to. That's why so much of that whole thing revolves around attraction, physical attraction, sexuality, all of that. It's so hard to find someone where you're willing to compromise and accommodate and exchange in those values, and that value exchange is the whole currency through which Venus operates, especially in romantic relationships. And this extends to all relationships with equals, with adults. Two adults interacting with mutual desire on the line, whether it's romantic relationship or like a business relationship, a business agreement, all of that's Venus. It's about these negotiated interactions that we have. You get this, I get this, and we're always seeing, do you appreciate what I'm giving up? Do you appreciate what I'm getting in return? You know, or, you know, I appreciate what you're giving, do you appreciate what I'm giving? And as soon as it's off by a little bit, we start to adjust. That's why Venus is related. This is why Venus rules Libra. So this is the big thing right now, because Venus is going retrograde in Libra, the sign that it rules. Now Jupiter is at the very end and it's about to move into Scorpio, so I don't consider the Jupiter part of it as much, especially as it relates to the personal interaction. But we see a lot of corrective things happening socially, or at least a lot of these issues coming up socially and disrupting. But it's really the tail end of Jupiter through Libra, which I'm going to talk about in another video. But this one is more about Venus and the relationship experience. So Venus through the physical body gives pleasure, through the mind gives happiness and shared experience. Whereas the Tamasic nature is our experience through pleasure. Rajas evolves that physical relationship and personal relationship to a situational one with another adult. Again, it's not a parent and a child. It's not a boss and an employee. It's two equals. So you want to, again, people will say, oh yeah, I'm like that with my children. Your children don't count. Your children aren't Venus, because it's not two adults, two equals. Now, your adult children, then that's different. But you'll get along with your adult children, not because you're their parent, but because you treat them like equals. So the Venus relationship is important once children grow up and start to try to relate to their parents as equals. So then the highest, the Sattvic Venus, is where we find happiness and beauty and joy and pleasure in everything. Not just an experience with another person or that sort of compromise with an individual and then groups of individuals and some kind of worldly experience, especially as it relates to people. Because as Venus evolves and we learn how to do a one-on-one relationship, then we kind of learn to evolve all of our relationships and our business agreements, and all of our agreements start to become better with people as Venus evolves. But that's still the Rajasic realm. We take the personal skills we have and bring them into something higher, maybe for the world. But the highest Venus, the Sattvic quality, is something that's not of this world, where we just find beauty in the fact that we're alive. And again, it's not even an external experience. It's not even a sunset or art or some external experience. It's an internal experience. It's the bliss of the soul. Not just, you know, the sunrise, or, I mean, we'll start to appreciate those things more, and in fact, many times, we'll start to connect with that higher Sattvic Venus energy in things that are not transactional with another person. Like the sunset, or a piece of art, or something that we don't have to do anything, or we don't have any relationship with. It's just something that's beautiful, and we're like, wow, that's beautiful, even though I don't have to do anything, I don't have any relationship with it except the beauty itself and the joy itself. Because, again, everything is a mirror. The other person, a relationship, is a mirror. Nature is a mirror. Everything is a mirror of consciousness. And so the reason we can become aware of that higher Sattvic Venus in something like the sunset or nature is because it's just there mirroring us, and we're not getting anything from it. We don't get anything from the sunset. Whereas, again, with a romantic partner, we're getting something. Make no mistake. This is why I say you should never forget, particularly as it relates to your romantic relationships and your friends and all that, you're getting something from it. That's the first reason why you're there. With every interaction with every other person, even your children. Now, children, when they're young and helpless, they teach us something different. Those are the times when we're purely selfless, when we have to just nurture the child and take care of the child. Or I also use the example of pets, where we get nothing from the pet. Doesn't give us anything. Doesn't give us money. You know, the thing it gives us is love. And it's because, but we would do it even if it doesn't give us love. It's because we want to give love, and we give selflessly. That's why I said most relationships, though, aren't like that. We're getting something. And as long as we're getting something, we're not connected with the pure energy itself. As long as there's something that we're getting and we're expecting and we're measuring, we're negotiating. Wait a minute, I did this, you didn't do that. Well, how would you feel if I said that and you did? You know, all that's still, even when it's evolved and enlightened, that's still Rajasic, which is back and forth, movement. Sattvic is, I don't get anything out of this. Or what I get from it is the thing itself. And by the way, we can have that with our romantic partners as well, but we're not going to have a romantic experience based on that. We can just love the person and love our partners because we love them, because our nature is love. But that kind of love for the romantic partner is the same love we have for any person. That's not a romantic love. The romantic involvement, the charge around having a partnership, that charge itself is the Rajasic Guna. That's what we learn in the romantic interaction. And we can be involved in that Rajasic thing with a person and still have that higher Sattvic love and appreciation and beauty for them. But we have that Sattvic love and appreciation and beauty for any and all people. But the romantic interaction we're having with them is the Rajasic. That's the Rajasic interaction. So Rajas is that back and forth. Sattvic is that just appreciation that mirrors the bliss of the soul. And again, a lot of times we find the bliss of the soul in a person where we don't want anything. It doesn't have to be a sunset. one of the most sacred relationships where we can learn that sort of bliss of the soul. Again, one of the things I said is like with pets, something that we just nurture and care for, but also even just with our friends. You know, friends are one of the most divine relationships because, again, we don't want anything from our friends. Now, again, it's still a negotiated, anything with another person, there's always going to be a bit of a negotiated thing happening, but we can have a lot of just selfless love for our friends and not really want anything from them, not like we are with our romantic partners. Again, friends are a little trickier, but there's a real key of devotion to the friendship. Like, for instance, we're not as judgmental, we're not as, you know, we just kind of want the best for them. We don't have necessarily anything to get from them. Now, once it starts getting all emotional and we start getting like that, then friendships can get like that too. But I'm saying there's a real opportunity in friendships because we're not so intimately involved. But we're close enough to where we see them and we just really love them and we enjoy ourselves with them and we don't judge them. We're just supportive. And there's like a devotion. So again, the highest quality of Venus is actually that devotion to beauty, to love itself, to life. And again, it's different than the moon, which is the feeling of pure love. Venus is the appreciation and the joy and the bliss that comes from the beauty of life, of how beautiful everything is, how beautiful people are, how joyful life is and can be. And this is why Venus is exalted in Pisces, which is really kind of not of this world. So, Venus going retrograde in Libra, starting on October 5th, is really going to show a kind of disruption in the sort of relationship we have with beauty, pleasure, happiness, those things I just mentioned, as a way to kind of purify in the sort of cauldron, the sort of crucible, the fiery depths where we may feel sort of dragged to hell and back. Through the sort of pit of desire that we can fall into when we attach to this world of ephemeral, changing experiences. Because that's not our true nature, that's not the true nature of Venus, that's not the true nature of beauty, that's not the true nature of bliss. This world is a facade. It's an illusion. It's like a veil. God conceals itself in the veil of Maya, the veil of illusion, so that we can come to know ourselves. But we get trapped in the seductive quality, the promise, the wispy promise of happiness somewhere. Oh, this thing is beautiful. This experience will make me feel good right now. One of the reasons why things like food is so difficult as an experience is because even if I can't manage something like a relationship because, the intimacy issues or whatever it might be, I know I can eat this piece of chocolate right now and I'll feel at least some pleasure. At least there'll be some pleasure. It's not happiness, but at least it's pleasure, and I'm in control of it. And when I get involved with another person, then, oh my God, I got to navigate all that. I'm not in control. I'm not very good at it. And in fact, it creates just the opposite. It creates pain, pleasure, aversion. This is why when we get older, too, those things become more magnified, right? The attractions and aversions get deeper as we have more and more experience. We have to evolve and unwind deeper levels of innocence as well as we experience the potential for deeper layers of consciousness and awareness. So these next 40 days or so will be big in looking at your relationships, not just with romantic partners, but to all kinds of you know, pleasure, desire, beauty, the ability and capacity to yield, to accept other points of view, other people's points of view, to accommodate, and the compromises that you're willing to make in order to feel pleasure and happiness, you know. And one of the things when Venus is powerful is as we mature with that energy, we learn to not pay too high of a price for our pleasure or happiness. You know, when we're younger, we pay too high of a price because we're out looking for pleasure and happiness, and we literally might pay a price, like a physical price, like pay money. I mean, you could even see, you know, paying money for expensive stuff, like expensive tastes and flashy clothes or something, because we think it's going to attract something to us. You can even look at even like paying literally for sex. I remember it's kind of a crass thing. It's kind of a joke, but I remember the tennis player Andre Agassi years ago. There was a quote where he was married to Brooke Shields, and then he broke up. Then marriage broke up, and then he really plummeted from the top of the tennis world. And there was an interview in the magazine where they said something about having sex the night before a tennis match or something like that. And he said, well, I've never seen where having sex before a tennis match was as much of a problem as being out to 3 a.m. in the morning looking for it is. So it's basically saying, you know, when you're with the partner or when you're peaceful and happy, you know, having sex before the tennis match isn't a big deal. But when you're not, and you're out looking for it and longing for it and searching, that drains your energy more than just having beautiful, you know, lovemaking or something. So again, this is the big thing that we evaluate with Venus, not just the physical energy, but the emotional energy. This is the currency that we're spending with our friends and in our interactions with romantic partners and with equals. Is it worth it to keep doing this? Is it worth it to keep trying to balance and harmonize our energies together? A lot of what we do here on Earth is to come here to try to learn how to do this. I think one of the main reasons we incarnate on Earth with a physical body is to try to interact with other physical bodies, especially the opposite physical body. And it's a very alluring thing, and it's also, it really pulls us outside of ourselves and really brings up, it's a very strong mirror that reflects back on us. So the next 40 days with Venus going through Libra especially, it's going to be a time to where you have to evolve that through some confusion. And it's going to be a purifying process, as it always is, but in particular as it relates to relationships, romantic and other kind of personal entanglements, which could be any kind of deep entanglement like a business relationship and partnership as well. All of them could be up for grabs from October 5th until like November, whatever it is, maybe 15th or something, whatever the date is, when Venus turns direct again. So keep that in mind. Share this with others if you think it'll help them.